So as I sit down, I'm faced with a lot of decision. What do I talk about that will be the most meaningful topic for the most diverse crowd of send out cards, distributors, affiliates for the week? And as I'm writing things out, I'm consciously aware that my message will stick and people will be more likely to remember the message if I told a story. And the reason Beach Money has been such a big hit over the years is because it touches people at an emotional level through the stories that I told in the book. It's just a bunch of stories. In fact, most of the chapters came from notes that I'd written from a Monday night training. It was a Sunday night training, actually, that I did for years and years and years. And people connect with stories. So I try and spin a story that's compelling, that's fun, that's relevant, that's personal, that's emotional, that's dramatic, that's fresh. And one of the things I do is I keep a file on my computer. And when a story that's engaging pops up on Facebook or in a blog or in an email, I create a page and I put it in a file called National Conference Call, NCC, to use it on a Monday night call. Or if I'm taking notes at a conference or a mastermind that I'm in, I'll put those notes into a file and call it NCC. And I always, when I'm sharing a story about something that I stole from something else, I always give that person or those people credit for the story. So I'm going to start with an example that you may have seen on Facebook a number of months ago. I received this message one morning when I was in Los Angeles. So I got this message and it was a story. It was from a woman named Paula Fowler. Paula said, "Hey, Jordan, I have no idea if you're going to get this message. I just saw you on Facebook. I saw you at an event years ago at a mastermind. You were on stage and you told the story of how you wrote your story, that you'd put it away because you were frustrated with it, that years later you pulled it out after moving and read it, that everything you had written had happened in your life. I'm sure that was about 5 or 6 years ago now. Well, on my flight home, I wrote my story. My husband had just left me. I was in an MLM, but not making a lot of money at the time. I had no idea how I was going to support myself. I wrote about what it would feel like to be with a man who treated me right. I wrote about how my kids were. I wrote about what my business was doing. I cried as I wrote it. I wanted you to know that you were the person who set a whole course of events into action in my life. I'm with a man who's exactly like I wrote about. My kids are doing amazing and are so happy in life. In the last 3 years, I've made over $700,000 in my personal income in my current MLM. I want you to know that your story changed my life and you've impacted the lives of my 3 children. Not only that, you've impacted the lives of every generation who will follow after me. Thank you. I only hope that this makes its way to you and not into your spam." So it's funny. It occurred to me, oh, you know what? She's writing this. It's funny, a few days ago, I wrote a new story. This is her. This is from Paula. It occurred to me that I'd accomplished everything in the original one. Don't ever stop sharing your story. Every time you impact a person's life, in turn, it will impact others. My prayer for you is that what you gave away to me will be returned back to you tenfold. I, in turn, will keep sharing it with others. I look forward to meeting you in person someday. And, you know, to this day, I've still never met Paula in person. So I want to share a couple of things about this. Paula was compelled to write out her perfect life because of a story that I told on stage at the MLM Mastermind event in Orlando. If I had just told the group what to do, she probably wouldn't have done it. In other words, if I had told her to write out her story, but I didn't share my story about writing out my life in the present tense, she probably would not have done it. Because I shared my personal story and the impact it had on my life, she was moved to take action. The story was meaningful to me, and so many people in the crowd connected with it. So she tried it out and created her own personal story that she shared with me in a post. Came back to me, it was like this, right? Loop. And now I've shared that story with you. The story is in Beach Money. You've probably seen it if you've read the book. It's chapter 3. It's called "It Rained on My Dreams That Day." And I was at a low point in my life. Nothing was working. I was feeling depressed, discouraged, and broken. And then I decided to walk the railroad tracks behind the rental on Mill Avenue that I was living in. It was a rainy, cold night. I wasn't going to take any desperate action, but I was trying to figure things out. I'd remember reading in some books the importance of writing out your perfect life as if it had already happened, and I'd never done this at the time. The next day, I took the day off work at the airline. I went to the Grand Canyon. I'd never been there. The beauty of the canyon inspired me. So you get the idea. You can read the whole story in the book Beach Money. So when Paula heard me tell this story, it moved her to want to do the same thing. And the next day, she took the same action that I took at a low point in her life. Just over 3 years later, her life and the life of her kids were transformed forever. So do you see how I'm now stealing her story and sharing it with her permission, People remember stories. So let's talk about some of the components of a good story. You don't need all of these components in your story to make it good. 2 or 3 of these components will create a great story. So I'm going to share 9 components with you, and then I'm going to break each one down. The first one is share the drama. It's called share the drama. You can type these in the comments, or if you're taking notes, take these down as notes. Number 2 is make it personal. Number 2 is make it personal. These are components of a great story. Again, you don't need all of them in a story, but 2 or 3 of them will make the story great. Number 2 is make it personal. Number 3 is stimulate all 5 senses. Number 4 is align and challenge. Align and challenge. Number 5 is what's the point? What's the point? I'm going to explain them in a minute. Number 6 is use metaphors. Number 7, amazing but true. Number 7 is amazing but true. Number 8 is meaningful to you. And number 9 is relevant to the listener/reader. Relevant to the listener/reader. So what I did is I asked myself, when I hear a story, what makes that story compelling? And I started writing a list. And this is the list I came up with. These are the 9 things that I see in a story that make the story compelling. And it doesn't have to be all 9 of them. It can be a couple, 3 of them. So I ask questions of myself like, is this story relevant? What point am I trying to convey? Can I give an example that will help people see something that they may not have seen before, like a metaphor? Am I emotionally moved by the story? Am I emotionally moved by the story? Am I stimulating senses so that the listener can experience what I experienced? So let's quickly go through each one of these components of a good story. How do you create your own story? Well, when I first got started in send out cards, I sent out 81 cards in 2 days on dial-up phone service. There was no high-speed internet in the mountains in Arizona. Can you hear the story in this statement? What components did I use just now in this one phrase? When I got started in send out cards, I sent out 81 cards in 2 days. That makes people go, wow. On dial-up phone service, that makes people even go more wow. So number 1, a little drama. I sent 81 cards on dial-up. Number 2, it's personal. Number 3, what's the point? I took massive action. And number 4, it's 100% relevant to my audience. So those are 4 of the 9 components in that one sentence. What happened because I sent out so many cards is I created a number of stories that I was able to tell others. Because I sent those cards out, it brought stories back to me. So for example, get ready, here comes another story. I pulled a business card out of a box. Check this out. I pulled a business card out of a box. I had no idea who the guy was. I know I'd met him because I had his business card. His name was Mick Fetty, said it right on the card. And he was a pest control guy. That was on the card as well. And I wrote in the card that I sent to him, Mick, I have no idea who you are, but I know we've met because I have your business card. I'd love to reconnect with you. When you have a moment, please give me a call sometime. Signed, Jordan, and I put my phone number. I put my picture inside the card on the left panel. About a week later, he called me and he said he remembered meeting me. I didn't remember meeting him, but he remembered meeting me. He said I was in the lobby of the Embassy Suites Hotel on Rural Road in US 60 in Arizona. He said I was wearing a suit and talking to another guy. He came over, he handed me his business card over 3 years ago and said, here's my card. You might need this someday. So I took a random card. I had no idea who the guy was, but I knew I met him because I had the card. I sent him a card, told him that I thought I'd met him before. He remembered coming over to me at this hotel and handing me a card in the lobby of the hotel saying, you might need this someday. He then walked away. Well, we had a nice conversation 3 years later after I sent him the send out cards. And 2 weeks later, he became one of my affiliates. And I was at a funeral. I have not seen him or talked to him or heard from him in quite a long time. But I was at a funeral a few weeks ago and a woman walked over to me and she said, do you remember me? And I said, no. She said, remember the guy, Mick Fetty, that you met in the hotel that you sent a card to that signed up as one of your affiliates? I go, yeah. She goes, I'm his mother. So he said, at some point, maybe we met, I don't know, or maybe he said something to her, but she remembered. And I've used this story many times. So can you feel the leverage you create by creating stories and telling them? So let's go over each component and talk about specifics. Number 1, share the drama. People are riveted by drama. I'm going to give you a quote. She has never experienced success in network marketing. She has never experienced success in network marketing. That's drama. Here's another one. He was in 11 companies in 10 years and never signed up a single distributor. True story. That's me. Lots of drama. She took the bus to work for 3 years because she couldn't afford to fix her car. That's drama. I took the bus to work for 3 years because I couldn't afford to fix my car. That's drama. So add some drama in your story. True story, true drama. Number two, make it personal, in quotation marks. I didn't have the money to sign up, so I had a garage sale. That's personal. I sold my TV, which was the best decision I've ever made. That's personal, and it's a little dramatic. I received a check and I knew that it would work. That's a little personal. My whole family told me no. That's a little dramatic and it's personal. So you want to make it a little personal. That's the second component. The third component, if you're getting stuff from this, pop them in the comments. If you like this, put something in the comments. If you're getting some ideas, put it in the comments. Number three, stimulate all five senses. You might remember me talking about Venice Beach, where in the early days, before I'd ever signed anybody up, before I had any money, I would take day trips to Venice Beach. And when I wrote this, my intention was to stimulate your senses so you could experience the full drama of the moment. So when I put this story in Beach Money in my book, I remember specifically thinking to myself, I want the reader to see it, to hear it, to smell it, and to feel it. Did I miss any? I wanted them to experience being there as they were reading this. So here it is. See if you can feel and experience and see it and smell it and taste it as if you're there. If you haven't been there, Venice Beach is quite a unique and unusual place. Actually, the story I'm going to tell you right now, this story is not in Beach Money. This is a story that I wrote years later, years after writing Beach Money. So if you haven't been there, Venice Beach is quite a unique and unusual place. Last night at 5:30 p.m., something happened that had us speechless, moved, and in awe. I'm not sure if I can even describe it. As the sun was setting, an intensely cold wind started wildly blowing the palm trees around. In moments, the weather went from warm and calm to cold and windy. The strong gusty wind was filling the cold air with dust from the beach. The sun was faded and orange as it made contact with the ocean. Two homeless men, one on a grand piano in the sand and another on a guitar, soulfully and loudly played Alleluia. The air was intense and electric. A crowd of about 500 people gathered around some sort of event on the boardwalk that had attracted 4 police cars and what seemed like the entire Venice Police Department. And as all of this was occurring, a loud helicopter hovered a few hundred feet off the ground, circling the whole event. We experienced the deepest feeling of life upon us as a mixture of music, weather, machine, and humanity converged in a moment of intensity like neither of us had ever witnessed. We stopped and just looked at each other and said, whoa, what was that? I guess you had to be there. So that was something that I wrote about Venice Beach. And when I wrote it, I wanted to stimulate the senses. So I think that's number 3, stimulate all 5 senses. Number 4, align and challenge. Align and challenge. I like to align myself with the listener or the reader so that they know that I'm just like them. I found people to be more engaged and related if they feel like I know them. I also like to challenge the listener or reader with new ideas and new concepts, but I want to align with them. So I want to do my best to speak in their language. So some examples are, I felt discouraged and defeated. None of my friends were supportive of my decision. Every business I started failed. I bounced 10 checks that week and was wondering if I was going to lose my job. Some people can relate to that. Here's another one. I decided that the plan I'd been working for over 10 years wasn't working. The model that I'd been taught in high school and in college was a complete flop. I just began to study those people that had college degrees and had been working jobs for 40 years and their lives were a financial mess. Again, trying to be aligned with them and related to them. So first align with the reader and then challenge their way of thinking. So the first thing I like to do is align with people, and then I like to challenge their way of thinking. Now, what I'm doing is I'm giving you distinctions to be aware of when you're creating your story. And your story doesn't have to be long. It can be 45 seconds and just incorporate a couple of these things in. And the way to do it is to make a list, have those in front of you and say, I want to incorporate this, this, and this into my 45-second talk that I'm going to put on Instagram. And then you could create it and use the big view to put together a little script. And so you have a little teleprompter there and you can just record it on your phone and then drop it on social media. Once you get the hang of it, you can do it in about 10 minutes each video. Number 5, what's the point? So you ask yourself, what message am I trying to convey? Like, what am I trying to leave them with? For example, my story needs to convey that a story is the best way to get my message across. So that's what I'm doing tonight. What's the point? I'm telling lots of stories, but I want to make sure that you're left with a story is the best way to get my message across. For tonight's call, I wanted to do two things. Number one, convey that a story is the best way to get a message across. And number two, what components can help to make a great story. Those are the two things I wanted to do tonight. Number one, convey a story convey that a story is the best way to get a message across. And number two, what components can help make up a great story? So number 6, use metaphors. Metaphors are examples that are similar in meaning. A metaphor is a figure of speech that describes a subject by asserting that it is on some point of comparison the same as another otherwise unrelated object or subject. Now you could tell that I Googled that, like, what's a metaphor? And I put it in my notes and I just read it to you. So here's some examples that you've heard me use. Your business grows like an oak tree. It starts as an acorn, and not all acorns germinate. If you sow enough seeds and the ground is fertile, a few will take root. That's a metaphor. Some will turn into giant oak trees and others will wither and die. With enough sowing, you may end up with a forest. You can count the acorns in a tree, but you can't count the trees in an acorn. So that's a metaphor, right? You could actually work some really nice, use the 5 senses in there too. I mean, you could work that into the story. It always starts off as being something, it could be bullet points or it could be a script, but it all starts off as being written down. Number 7, we're going to go a little long tonight, but not too long. Number 7, amazing but true. This one is similar to drama. When you experience something amazing, share it. People love amazing but true. They love amazing but true stories. The formula Ron Howard uses to determine if he's going to do a movie is an amazing but true formula. Ron Howard asks himself, is this a story? I heard him in an interview and he said he does focus groups with young people that don't know the true story he's thinking about directing. And if he tells them the story and if it sounds too good to be true, then he directs it. If it's not unbelievable, then he feels like it won't be dramatic enough to make an impact. So when you experience something unbelievable that's hard for people to believe, that's dramatic. It's amazing but true. That makes a great story. For example, Apollo 13 and Rush. These stories seem so unrealistic to the young people that they didn't even know the real story, yet the story was true. Ron Howard felt like they would make great movies. Amazing but true always makes for a good story. Couple more. Number 8, meaningful to you. If a story is meaningful to you, then you'll have passion for it. And passion is always a component of a great story. When something moves me, I share it if it's relevant to the person or people that I want to share it with. So it's good to have it meaningful to you. And then number 9, pretty obvious, relevant to the listener. If I tell a group of young people that send out cards is a great vehicle to prepare for retirement, that's not relevant to them because a group of young people are not going to be interested in retirement. But if I tell them that send out cards is a great way of retiring before they hit the age of 26 years old, well, I probably wouldn't say that because it's a little bit of a projection, but it is definitely more relevant to say that. So they don't have to be in a rocking chair before they can enjoy life. That may be more relevant to them. So you want to consider your audience when you're telling a story. So I want to finish with a story. Surprise, right? I figured out a way to get people to lean forward before I tell a story. You want to hear what it is? Let me know in the comments if you want to hear how you get somebody to lean forward before you tell a story. You want to hear what it is? Seriously. Would you like to hear how to get people to stop what they're doing so they're fully engaged in your story? You'll not even believe what I'm going to tell you. It'll blow you away. You've never heard anything like it. Ready? Are you ready? That's how you do it. I figured out a way to get people to lean in before I tell a story. Do you want to hear it? Seriously, would you like to hear how to get people to stop what they're doing so that they're fully engaged in your story? You won't even believe what I'm going to tell you. It will blow you away. You've never heard anything like it. Are you ready? There it is. So there you go. That's a bonus tip. Hopefully you got it. If you didn't get it, if you're going, what is he talking about? Then you might want to listen to that one again. So hopefully you got some good ideas from tonight. And that Big View app could be helpful to you. You could create a little 45-second, 1-minute story, use some of these components, put it in the app, generate your teleprompter, and then just turn the phone right side up or I'm sideways or horizontal or vertical, set it on your computer and hit the start button and record it. And if you want to add captions, just click one of the captions buttons. It'll add the captions for you. You can even edit the captions if you want to. Save it to your phone, and then you can post it on social media. Listen, hope you have a great week. Share some good stories with some of your potential customers and affiliates and see if you can enroll some people. And let's have a great week. Talk to y'all later. Take care. Bye, everybody. Appreciate you.